Panzer Campaigns represents a period in history which the speed and severity of mobile warfare shocked the world. River crossings represented major impediments to armies moving hundreds or even thousands of kilometers across continent-sized fronts. The advent of motorized bridging units, amphibious vehicles, and engineer capabilities meant armies could cross rivers faster and under more adverse conditions than in World War I or earlier. Welcome back to Panzer Campaigns Boot Camp. In this two-part video, we explore various topics around movement and water. You will learn simple to advanced movement concepts, water crossing methods, and how to make use of your engineers to overcome these water barriers. In this first video, we will discuss movement, crossing water barriers, bridges, and ferries. Let's look at the various types of water hexes and hex sides in Panzer Campaigns. A full water hex cannot be crossed by units except when on a boat or ferry, which we will discuss later. Water hexes represent wide and deep rivers or other large bodies of water. River hex sides cannot be crossed by units except by ferry or bridge. These hex sides are rivers which are not as wide and deep as full water hexes. Canal hex sides are similar to river hex sides and function in the same way. AT ditches are not water, but function similarly to canals with additional rules. Consult the manual for details. Gullies and streams offer an impediment but can be crossed by all units for an added movement cost, streams being the more expensive. Frozen hexes only occur when weather is frozen and represents a frozen full water river which can be crossed by all units. During frozen conditions, rivers and canals turn into gullies and streams and gullies disappear. Pay attention to the weather forecast lest you find yourself on the wrong side of an impassable hex. Let's consider the basic rules for crossing water. Stream hex sides can be crossed by all units for a movement cost. Consult the summary reference document to quickly see the movement cost. Here, we can see a basic foot-borne infantry unit cross a stream into a clear hex. The movement cost of the clear hex here is 6, and the cost of crossing the stream is 6, for a total of 12 movement points. Here, we have a deployed motorcycle unit, which can be thought of as being on foot and pays the identical movement cost of 12. And here we have a motorcycle unit in travel mode. Crossing a stream costs 24 points for the clear hex and 52 points to cross the stream for a total of 76 movement points. Here's a tracked tank paying a cost of 6 for the clear hex plus 18 for a total of 24 movement points. The same principles which apply to streams also apply to gully hexes. Bridges over streams will allow road movement only if the bridge can support the unit and the unit is in travel mode and will not exceed the road stacking limit. If the bridge cannot support the unit, or if the unit exceeds the road stacking limit, the unit will use its normal movement cost plus the cost of the stream. To illustrate this point, we will look at two examples. Here's a tracked unit in travel mode crossing a heavy bridge over a stream into a clear hex which counts as road movement for a cost of 4 movement points. Here's a tracked unit crossing a light bridge over a stream into a field hex. Because the bridge will not support the unit does not use the road movement and instead pays 6 for the cost of the field hex and 18 to cross the stream for a total of 24 movement points. Bridges come in different types and have their own set of rules for consideration. Bridges can be crossed by units depending upon the capacity of the bridge itself. In order to cross a bridge, the unit must be in travel mode and must meet the unit type restriction of the bridge as defined by the movement type of the unit. Light bridges can accommodate infantry units, ski, bicycle, horse, or any unit that is on foot. Light bridges are also sometimes used to represent railroad bridges, which is reflective of rail bridges being unable to accommodate other vehicles. I will take a moment here to discuss the on-foot command. For a unit with transport, the on-foot command can be issued to force the unit to move on foot. The unit can regain its vehicle transport by being in the same hex as its parent HQ at the start of its turn. Giving up your transport with the on-foot command allows you to press an attack that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. To demonstrate this feature, you can see that this motorized infantry unit is unable to cross the bridge in travel mode. However, I will use the on-foot command to allow this motorized infantry to cross this light bridge. I'll take a moment to emphasize that the major utility which your motorized and mechanized units offer is their speed and mobility. As a battlefield commander, the currencies you deal with are space, time, and blood. Use the on-foot command when necessary, but always have a plan to get your men back on their trucks. Be mindful that HQ units cannot go on foot and therefore cannot be ferried by an engineer. This can result in disruptions to your supply line and make it difficult for you to press the attack forward. Moving on. Medium bridges can accommodate infantry, cavalry, and non-armored vehicles, and heavy bridges can accommodate all units. Engineer bridges count as heavy bridges. River fords can be crossed by all units while in travel mode for a movement cost. Again, consult the parameter data. Fords can effectively be thought of as bridges with high movement costs. To illustrate the bridge weight requirements, we can see here a tracked unit next to a medium bridge which they cannot cross. On the same hex, the motorized infantry can cross the medium bridge. Panzer Campaigns has a zone of control rule exception for bridge travel. Typically, units cannot move from one enemy zone of control to another enemy zone of control. Certain units are allowed an exception to this rule and can cross a bridge under enemy zone of control at the cost of their total movement allowance for that turn. The units must be in travel mode, not rail mode. They must not be disrupted or broken, and must not have moved that turn. In these circumstances, the unit can cross the bridge. This forced bridge movement rule is in place to prevent situations where a river crossing would be entirely precluded by the clever orientation of zone of control. Note that in the case of full hex bridges or pontoon bridges, movement is not blocked by enemy zone of control, and the forced bridge movement rule does not apply. To demonstrate the forced bridge movement rule, we can see that this unit of infantry is pinned between the enemy's zone of control and the river. Here, though, we can see that this infantry is allowed an exception to the zone of control because they are using a bridge. Note that forced bridge movement can also be used for bridges across streams as demonstrated here. A more practical example of the forced bridge movement rule can be seen here. The enemy unit's zone of control would otherwise preclude the motorcycle infantry from crossing the bridge, which in some cases could leave the attacking player without a practical option. In this case, we can move the motorcycle infantry across the bridge to press the attack. This can be quite risky for the attacking player, so proceed at your own risk. As the defending player, don't rely on your zone of control to prevent bridge crossings. Bridges can be destroyed by wired explosion rules or by an engineer action. Destroyed bridges cannot be repaired, but engineers can create new bridges over destroyed bridges, except in the case of a pontoon bridge over a damaged full water hex bridge. You'll need to find another spot. Consult the manual for the specific rules around destroying bridges. More on pontoon bridges later. Units capable of moving across a bridge can also assault across that bridge. The same travel rules apply, though. The unit must be in travel mode and will take the corresponding penalty to their assault calculation. Ferries come in two types. Hex-side ferries can be set on a scenario-by-scenario basis, while the full hex ferries are specific to the map. The hex-side ferry will allow units to cross river hex sides under certain conditions. The unit must be in travel mode, not disrupted or broken, and must use its full movement points to cross the ferry. Additionally, the unit must be broken down to its smallest component, for example, a single company out of a battalion. We'll demonstrate the hex-side ferry two different ways. First, we can see this foot-borne infantry battalion is in travel mode with full movement available. However, the unit is combined and must be broken down to cross using the ferry. If I separate a company from the parent battalion, I can see that the company size unit can now cross. Note that only one unit can cross a hex-side ferry per turn. You can tell whether a hex-side ferry has been used during the turn by examining the hex details. If the word ferry is in capitals, it has not been used this turn. Other units of any weight can cross a hex-side ferry as long as they meet the requirements. Here we see a tracked tank as well as an artillery piece cross via ferry. However, this towed gun cannot cross because it used movement points to change to travel mode. Units can also assault over a ferry. The same travel rules apply though. The unit must be in travel mode and will take the corresponding penalty to their assault calculation, as well as paying the extra movement cost to cross the ferry. Any unit which is not broken, digging in, or building a bridge can damage a hex-side ferry and render it unusable. This action consumes 1/3 of the unit's movement points and destroys every hex-side ferry that is adjacent to that unit. This action is not to be confused with the damage bridge, ferry, or AT ditch engineer action, which can be used by engineers to damage full hex ferries. Interestingly, an engineer can use the damage bridge, ferry, or AT ditch to damage a hex-side ferry as well, and it will allow your engineer to target a specific hex-side ferry for destruction while consuming the entirety of its movement points. Full hex ferries are ferries which allow transit across one or more full water hexes. Similar to hex-side ferries, units must be in travel mode to use a full hex ferry. The unit must not have used any movement points and will use its full movement points to enter the water hex. Unlike hex-side ferries, full water hex ferries can be used by units which are combined, so you can cross your full battalion. A full water hex ferry must be entered and exited from the specific entry and exit hex sides. Those hex sides are usually designated as a trail, but can be a different type of road as well. Check the hex side details of the water hex at the entry or exit point to see which hex side you need to enter from. Pay attention here or you will end up wasting a turn repositioning your unit to the correct hex side. When moving onto land or further along the ferry path, the unit will use movement points like normal. That means that once disembarking from the ferry, your unit can exit travel mode, shoot, advance further inland, or take other actions that cost movement points. Units can assault from a ferry with the commensurate penalties for being in travel mode. Unlike hex-side ferries, units that are disrupted can cross a full hex ferry. However, if that unit needs to assault through an opposing unit to disembark, it will be unable to do so. Units can also reverse their course over the full hex ferry should they need to back off their intended course of action. Similar to hex-side ferries, engineers can destroy full hex ferries and in order to do so must be deployed with full movement points, not broken, digging in, or building a bridge. If the engineer meets all of those criteria, the full hex ferry can be destroyed by using all of the engineer's movement points via the damage bridge, ferry, or AT ditch action. In this instance, if a unit exists on the ferry hex, it will be returned to its previous starting location. When you're on the attack, take advantage of ferries to cross bodies of water, and when you're on the defense, consider destroying ferries to prevent enemy access. One final point on ferries. Both hex-side and full water hex ferries cannot be restored once destroyed, so consider your situation carefully and be mindful of your avenues for potential counterattack. In this video, we learned about various movement techniques related to water, as well as the mechanics surrounding bridges and ferries. In our next video, we will learn about engineers as they relate to water barriers in Panzer campaigns. I'll see you in the next installment.